When I first got to know this, I was truly excited. If I was not a pilot, I would enroll into flight training school immediately. Hello again, beautiful humans. There have been talks of a recession coming where things are getting harder and it is time to tighten our belts. First of all, what is a recession? It is a business cycle contraction that happens when there is a drop in economic activity. In general, a recession happens in a country when there are negative growth rates for 2 consecutive quarters. People tend to spend less, which leads to hefty discounts. So, why are airline ticket prices getting more and more expensive? Stay tuned. During past financial crises, one of the first industries to be affected is the tourism industry. People have less money to spend, so more concentration will go into essential items and not luxury stuff like travel, etc. The prices of flight tickets will tend to go down during these times. But in this current situation now, what we are seeing is that prices of flight tickets are going up and are continuing to rise. As of now, we can see that there are a lot of airlines that are in financial trouble after the pandemic. Those that could not survive either merge with other airlines or being shut down permanently. Those that remain, however, are in a great position to capture market share, and bookings have risen up substantially. As always, the media can portray what it wants, but the truth still remains. The demand for travel is soaring, and some airlines in Europe and Asia are planning to expand its fleet. This is rather unusual for this type of economic outlook. If you have watched my previous video about aviation in India, I mentioned that Air India has an order book of close to 500 planes, which makes it the largest order in history. In the United States, United Airlines has also ordered a substantial amount of wide-body and narrow-body aircrafts. More planes means more pilots are required. During the pandemic in 2020, the 80-20 rule slot time for airports was removed because there were simply no planes that were flying. What is the rule all about? In order for an airline to keep its slot time, they would have to use 80% of their takeoff slots in order to keep them. If the airline does not comply to this, then another airline might just come along and snatch it up. During the pandemic, it made sense for the rule to be abandoned. Some airlines during the pandemic had to fly a plane that has no passengers in it so that they are able to keep these slots. This sounds rather ridiculous, but well, all these so-called ghost flights actually happened. Airport authorities later then said, hey, don't do that, we will waive this rule for now. Right now, in 2023, this rule is now back into play, signaling a surge in aviation demand. More airlines are now vying for the same profitable slots. This is a good indication that travel is now back in full force. With all this supply, planes are coming back, expansion ramping up. The golden question remains is that why are ticket prices still so high? It comes as a surprise to analysts that predicted that further contraction in the aviation industry will happen after the pandemic. They assume that people will be less likely to travel and that ticket prices still will be low, making the airlines suffer even more. What they did not foresee was basic human psychology. We humans in general are social creatures, and even though people had food, shelter and access to internet when they were staying home, it felt like a prison to most people. Once travel restrictions were eased and eventually lifted up, boom! People started their journey of revenge traveling, trying to make up for lost time. This was a huge wake-up call for airlines as they scrambled to get their jets back. This was very different compared to 9/11 attacks where people were afraid to travel. After the attacks, people did not want to travel. This was in contrast with the pandemic. People's appetite for travel has not waned during the pandemic. They were just simply not able to fly. They want to, but could not. And this was a misconception that analysts had it wrong all along. As most aircraft are hibernated during the pandemic, it takes several weeks for an aircraft to be certified and be fully functional. This is also coupled with the fact that airlines are now more careful in selling their tickets. Back in 2022, the travel demand was on a parabolic surge, 90-degree jump, that airports in various cities were unable to cope with the amount of passengers. This led to passengers missing their flights all across Europe and America and caused a damage in the airline's reputation. And so in 2023, airlines have become more conservative and are scheduling lesser flights in order to restore its reputation. A bad customer experience in the airport, even though it is not the airline's fault, might still tarnish the image of an airline. Another reason that the supply of flights is still unable to meet demand is that in certain parts of Europe and Asia, there were a shortage of planes and pilots. Like I mentioned, planes take a long time to be certified airworthy, and also pilots need time to complete their refresher training. Some airlines were also smart not to retire or delay their retirement of older aircrafts. British Airways and KLM have retired their Boeing 747 fleet, and when you do that, you would need maybe 2 smaller planes to replace them. All these airlines have decided to replace them with brand new 787s. The problem starts blooming when Boeing faced production issues with their 787 last year, and this has impacted the airlines who have retired their old fleet prematurely. One more reason for the lack of supply is the decisions for airlines to defer their new aircraft deliveries. If you are a big airline, your burn rate in a day could be in the millions. Your first priority as head honcho is to stop the bleeding. This would mean cutting costs, and one of the ways is to halt your aircraft deliveries. Of course, some airlines with huge cash reserves like Wizz Air have been on the offense early on and has taken up other airlines' delivery slots. Wizz Air now is definitely poised to be one of the biggest airlines in Europe. Rising interest rates and airlines' expenses are also the cause of your flight ticket price being so high. Things have gotten much more expensive with inflation, and so airline employee wages would have to rise with the times. In certain regions like the United States, there is a massive pilot shortage because all the baby boomers were forced to take an early retirement during the pandemic. And during the pandemic, there were lesser pilots being trained to replace them. It takes about 1.5 years to train a jet pilot, and this will be an uphill task for most airlines. Some airlines have adopted a strategy to have lesser flights and higher ticket prices. In the past 2 years, the strategy was to survive and encourage people to travel. Ticket prices was low back then. Right now, with travel demand back in full force and expenses has increased due to inflation, airlines have adapted and adjusted their prices. Is this good or bad? Well, it will definitely hurt the consumer's wallet, but hey, I'm just stating the facts. Both Airbus and Boeing have also taken up initiatives to ramp up its production lines. Airbus has decided to produce up to 75 single-aisle aircrafts per month. Boeing is also trying to play catch-up by having additional assembly lines in Everett and Renton in Washington. They are projected to produce up to 84 aircrafts per month. When I first got to know this, I was truly excited. If I was not a pilot, I would enroll into flight training school immediately because in the next few years, the demand for pilots will continue to rise. The aviation industry will face a shortage of pilots in the next few years. Is this for certain? Well, what is certain in life? Only death and taxes. There are no certainties in life, only probabilities. And now is probably the best time to be in the aviation industry. As for consumers, what is the solution to high prices? Well, choose a reliable low-cost carrier if you are having a budget constraint. After all, you could save a lot on your seat and spend more once you reach your destination. And if you can afford a little bit of luxury, then high ticket prices might not hurt you as much. The best way to experience life is to travel, and if you are able to do so, just go for it. There's no point in waiting to do something because life is so unpredictable. As everything in life, these challenges and problems are impermanent. When the airline industry has normalized their growth issues post-pandemic, then ticket prices will eventually come down. It is indeed a truly exciting time to be involved in the aviation industry. Happy growing!